Welcome to Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. The only podcast where it's okay to talk in band. On this podcast, you will be able to hear conversations with some of the greatest names in wind band conducting, composing, and arranging. We'll also visit with great college, high school, middle school, and elementary band directors to get their thoughts on various aspects of being a band director. We'll have regular check-ins with instrument specialists, music dealers, and instrument repair professionals. And if that's not enough, we'll even have regular conversations with Dr. Tim, who will help keep us motivated. That's Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. And now, here's Charlie.
Welcome to Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. And today, I am happy to bring you podcast number 43 and number 4 of season 2. It's so great that you once again have given up your time to join me, and I know you're going to enjoy today's conversation with a guy who has quite a story to tell. His name is Dave Knox, and among other things, Dave is the guy behind banddirector.com, a website for band directors. Great resources, lots of information. I met Dave a whole bunch of years ago, and I can tell you there is nobody who loves band and realizes how important band is in a person's life than Dave Knox. And you're going to hear all about it in just a couple of minutes. Here we are in the middle of February 2021. And all we can hope is that the light we are hearing about at the end of the COVID tunnel is not an oncoming train. I was lucky enough to get my first vaccine last week, and I'm happy to report I had no side effects. The most pain I endured was waiting in my car for over 2 hours to get into the parking lot so I could get the shot. Hopefully, if you're listening and you want to get the vaccine, that you can do so soon. And I hope the process and the shot are without incident.
Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends is made possible through the support of Hal Leonard, publisher of the Essential Elements Method for Band. Advantage Network Percussion, where you only get the advantage if you're part of the network. ThePodcastingStore.com, your one-stop shop for the finest in podcasting and virtual learning gear. And Vandercook College of Music, home of the Mecca Continuing Education Program, where you'll find an online class for your every need.
Well, before I get to today's conversation with Dave Knox, I want to take a moment to share some thoughts with you. Thoughts I've been mulling over for some time now. Thoughts about the people I really admire, and what is it about them that makes me admire them? What sets them apart from others? Is it their talent level, their intellect, their job, their status in life? Now, I'm not talking about people I like, because I know and I like a lot of people. No, I'm talking about those people I really admire. I've determined those folks who I really hold up there in my Mount Rushmore, my who's who of friends and colleagues. They're the ones who seem to never wade into those controversial waters. Now, some of you may think if you don't take a stand on an issue or on an event, or speak out about a person who has acted in a way that made them newsworthy, well, that you're simply weak, that you have no convictions, and that you stand for nothing. If you don't come out on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram and really bash someone or bitch about something, well, then you don't have much of a spine, do you? And you'll stand for anything. But I'm here to tell you that after much thought, if you really felt that way, and if you feel that way, I respectfully disagree with you. I've found those people who don't make public statements, who don't write or speak negatively, be it social media or in person. Those people are the ones with real character. They have realized the principles of human decency and fairness, and they realize those principles are to be valued at the highest level. Oh, it's not that they don't have an opinion on matters. I'm sure they do. They just don't need to seek others who may agree with their position. They're comfortable knowing their opinion and that their opinion matters to them. They understand there is no need to share their opinion with anyone else. There is no need to risk the relationship. If you listen and you watch carefully, these folks usually just smile and nod. They realize acknowledgement is not agreement. They acknowledge your right to an opinion and see no reason to validate or violate it with their personal beliefs. They know the only side to doing so is a downside. It's a great quality, and like anything else, it gets easier with practice. So I will leave you with a challenge this week. When someone posts something to which you may agree or disagree, or when you get the urge to post something that allows you to shout from the mountaintop about your opinion or your righteousness, take a pass. Smile and nod. Allow your feelings to be just those, your feelings. Don't put yourself in a position that may put you in the crosshairs of another's attack. Leo Buscaglia once stated, "Misery doesn't love company, it demands it." If you are miserable about something or someone, then do something about it. Don't react, act. Tackle the issue head on and do what you can do to make a difference. And if you determine there is nothing you can do to change the situation, then simply leave it alone. There are many ways to advocate for your position, and sometimes the loudest voice in the room is the one who doesn't speak. There are positive ways to get your point across without demeaning anyone. So as my mother told me, and probably your mother or father told you somewhere along the way, if you don't have anything nice to say about someone or something, then don't say anything at all. I wish you well. We'll be right back with Dave Knox after this.
This is Drew with thepodcastingstore.com, your one-stop shop for everything podcasting and remote learning, and a proud sponsor of Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. Listen to what we've been working on in this clip from our podcast.
Hi, I'm Ward Durrett from thepodcastingstore.com and Boomer Music in Fort Collins, and we're going to talk about the JBL Eon Compact PA system today. What we're using today for demonstration for your purposes is the Galaxy GTV wireless system. So in our remote teaching world, this unit is tremendous for use indoors and outdoors. We're great outdoors for marching band rehearsals, any outdoor ensemble or choir or street, any rehearsal or setting that's required to be outside. Indoors, same thing when you need more presence of sound.
To hear the rest of this podcast, please visit thepodcastingstore.com, your one-stop shop for everything podcasting and remote learning. This is Drew with thepodcastingstore.com. Now back to Charlie.
Every once in a while you meet somebody that, I don't know, there's a special quality, there's a special something about that person that immediately you go like, yeah, I'm connecting with this guy, I'm connecting with him. And that happened to me back when I was teaching at Vandercook. I got a call from our guest, and he started talking about an idea that he had, wanted to come to Chicago, and he made a special trip to Chicago. And we sat down, and there was this passion that he brought. And I looked in his eyes, and I could just tell that this guy really meant every word he said. And his idea was to form a resource for band directors. That is a website that we're going to be talking about. And since that time, we've stayed in contact. I consider him a dear friend, and I want to welcome to the podcast Mr. Dave Knox. Dave, welcome.
Thank you, Charlie. I'm glad to be here.
Well, many people may not know you by name, but, they know your work, or at least they've experienced the fruits of your labor, and there's been a lot of labor that you've put into this. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But before we do, I always like to ask our guests to give them a look at where you grew up and how you got into music, because I think what it does is it helps to level the playing field, and it lets people know that, hey, we've all kind of been on this same journey, So talk to us about the young Dave Knox.
Well, I grew up on the east side of Detroit and went to high school there, grade school, big family of 7. Boy Scouts, loved to play, just kind of a rambunctious kid. It didn't have very much parental supervision, so I had the freedom to explore. And it was a great neighborhood. It was a lot of playing baseball in fields at the school, and all of that. And
Did you have a musical family? Come from a musical family?
I did not. I was the only one that was really interested. Wanted to play the clarinet. Why I chose the clarinet, I don't know. My grandmother bought me a used clarinet. I had it on my handlebars, and I'd ride my bike to the local music store. And I joined band in seventh grade. And I remember those days. I remember vividly, going to that local music store and the sounds in the store, seeing the instruments on the wall. I just somehow connected with it. And I started band seventh grade, Marquette High School on the east side of Detroit, seventh and eighth grade. And I joined the band in ninth grade at Finney High School in Detroit. And, I was not that exemplary kid that played in band. Mr. Baker, the band director, would have never thought in a million years that I would have pursued music as part of my life. Never in a million years. Didn't practice really that much. I just loved being in that environment, I guess.
So you were in the middle of the clarinet section, is what you're telling me, in a pretty good high school band.
Yes. In fact, some of the students that came out of that band went on to be great musicians in Detroit. Trombonist named Ron Kischuk sat across the band, played with Johnny Trudell's band, big band here in Detroit. Went on the road with a lot of people. And, Detroit put out some great musicians, whether it was my high school or surrounding high schools that I met friends, and, they were from other high schools in the Detroit area that are just superstars today. And
so did you know music was a calling when you were in high school? When you graduated, did you go to college to?
No, it was a tough school because a lot of things changed in Detroit at that time. Busing started. It was not really accepted in those areas. It turned around to be a pretty tough school. And I can remember the first football game in ninth grade. As soon as the teams hut the first play, the stands would empty, they would fight, and band was over. And that went on for the first 3 home games. After that, just pure pressure. I quit band for all the wrong reasons. I think the last concert was the winter concert on stage in the gym. And I didn't know it then, but I can see myself sitting there today and just soaking in the sounds around me. When the band started to leave the stage and the gym started to clear out, I sat there and I just loved that sound around me, immersed in the middle of it. And as we talk later, that was, I think, the moment that I decided later on, I went back to that memory and had to be part of that.
So what did you do after high school?
Well, my wife of 43 years now.
Congratulations.
I've got 3 kids, 9 grandkids. And I met her when I was in 11th grade. She was in 10th grade, high school sweethearts. So when I graduated high school, I didn't know what to do. And my neighbor at the time said, why don't you come down and take the test? The Detroit Fire Department's hiring. He was a firefighter. And so I said, yeah, I'll go take that test. And so I got accepted, went through the academy, and started a career as a Detroit firefighter. During that year, I just turned 20. I looked at my wife and said, let's get married. And so we got married. She was 19, I was 20. Had a career and thought I was set for life.
So how many years were you a firefighter?
About 10 years. And, after 10 years, people don't realize, but in large cities like Detroit, which is probably similar to other large cities, houses burn down every day, and the firefighters run. And, there's a lot of heroes out there, police and fire. I mean, they literally, you run all night long in some areas. But after 10 years, out of 40 men and women that were in my class, there was about 10 of us left. And my wife and I looked at each other and said, might want to think about a career change because longevity might not be, in the cards for that type of career.
So is that when that memory came back of you sitting as a ninth grader absorbing that sound and you said, I miss music in my life?
I think so. My wife and I said, well, what am I going to do? And I said, I want to be an orchestral clarinet player. I don't know what that meant at the time, and I don't think she did either. But I made that decision with her. And Charlie, it's hard to explain because I had 3 kids at the time. I had just bought a house, car, so mortgage, all that went along with it. And here I am going to change careers, quit, and go back to school to be an orchestral clarinet player. But this wouldn't have happened without her support, because I think when you have a dream or you have something you want to do and you're questioning whether or not you want to do it or you can succeed at it, but if you have somebody that has unconditional love and support, it's almost like you feel like you can do anything. And, she sacrificed a lot, because I was focused on what my mind was telling me to do. And I could only do what my next step was. So when I started lessons at a studio in Detroit, it was just conquer that next lesson, and so to pay the bills, I started cutting grass, washing windows. So I was doing that during the day, practicing at night, trying to fit the family life into that, taking music lessons. Didn't look back, but she never questioned it. I guess she believed in it as much as me, or believed in me anyways. And, I keep thinking now, geez.
Had you kept up with your clarinet while you were a firefighter, or was it sitting in the case somewhere?
No, I had stopped. Oh, well, no, I had to buy one. I bought a secondhand, used student clarinet, and, trying to buy reeds, washing windows and cutting grass doesn't pay a whole lot when you have a mortgage and everything else you got to pay for it. And,
So you got yourself ready and you go back to school. You said you went to what, Wayne State?
Wayne State University in Detroit. So my private teacher, I told him what I wanted to do. And, now I was 10 years older than any high school player coming out of high school that was one of the better high school musicians that wanted to make music a career. So I guess I convinced him, and everything he gave me, I practiced until I could master it, tonguing, fingering, scales, everything. So he was an adjunct professor at Wayne State University. He talked to the band director, Harold Arnaldi, at the time, and said, hey, I got this young man that, this is what he wants to do. So they agreed to let me in as long as I could, if I could keep up and continue, then, and I was pursuing an education degree at the time. That's how they got me in. So I had to talk to Paul Schaller once I was in, who was the principal with the Detroit Symphony, and he was the clarinet private teacher there. So that was another conversation, So here I talked to Paul Schaller, He's been with the Detroit Symphony 30 years as principal. His father was the principal with the New York Philharmonic. So there was, he knew, and like we know now, you have to be pretty exceptional to be an orchestral player. I was so far past that, but I did the same thing. I would practice as many hours as I could get in, and every week I'd come back, I'd have what he gave me mastered. So, but I can remember the first day I sat in band. I was ready to play. I could look at the music, and when that downbeat came, I was as frozen as a block of ice. I had no idea. I had no idea what to do. It's one thing practicing on your own. It's another thing, keeping time and being up with the band. So one of the other professors that was in the band room at the time came back behind me, and he would point, to show me where I should be. But it didn't take long, to catch up.
So did you ever think about, I'm going to be a band director?
I did. I was actually pursuing both the music ed degree and a performance degree. Now, my wife worked, so there was a few days there a week that I would have to bring my kids to school. They would sit in the back of the band or back of the classroom. I'd bring their lunch or their, whatever they had to do to keep quiet. And after 4 years, going into my senior year, it would have been another year and a half maybe that I would have had to do to complete both degrees. And I think at that time I was playing pretty good. And I decided to, finish school and before my kids were starting to, go to college. So I just left the music ed degree at the side, and I did my senior recital, and I finished and started private teaching. There's where the moment came that says, oh boy, now what?
So did you get your degree in clarinet performance?
I did. And
Did you do any auditions for orchestral jobs?
I didn't do auditions like that. I mean, at that point, I realized that, there were kids that were 10 years younger than me that could outplay me, and they were just fabulous players. But there was a local event that hired most of the Detroit Symphony members. And Ted Owen, who was the new principal after Paul retired, gave my name. And so I was hired. I sat next to Ted, played second clarinet with many of the DSO members. And I got through that job, and, I accomplished what I wanted to do. I was satisfied.
So I understand somewhere along the way, you broke your clarinet mouthpiece or dropped it or something, and then that opened up like a whole nother page in your life.
I did. Well, I was still cutting grass and washing windows and teaching privately, but I was doing a gig that had a harp and I think it was maybe clarinet quartet or a clarinet trio. And they were moving the harp and it started to tip. And I grabbed it with one hand, and the clarinet in my other hand kind of swung and hit one of the strings and just drilled a hole in the tip of the mouthpiece. And I just could not afford to have somebody make me a custom mouthpiece like Jim Pine or some of the guys that were real popular. So a friend of mine at a local music store that I would always go to, I told him the story, and he gave me a bag of old mouthpieces and said, hey, maybe one of these will play. Well, they didn't really play like the one I had. And so I just set out to try to copy what I had. So I made my own tools. I made templates to measure the slope of the opening, the tip opening. I tried to learn everything about it. And while I was doing that, you'd make a couple cuts or a couple sandpaper motions, and then you play test it, and you do it again, you play test it, you do it again, and then I ruin it. I'd get to a point and it wouldn't be any good. But after a while, I got pretty good, and I can't explain it, but I started to be able to understand where the mouthpiece adjustments could adjust the sound. So I made a couple mouthpieces, bought a couple standard blanks, whittled them down to where I thought it was a great mouthpiece, gave it to some friends. They loved it. That local store I was telling you about, he put them in the counter. They started to sell. And pretty soon I had people coming from all over wanting to make mouthpieces or adjust what they had. And, they would say, like Terry Harrington was a Detroit native. He is now, he did all the sound for the Simpsons TV show. Lisa plays the Barry and all that. Well, he's a Detroit native. He'd come back every year. And the local music store where I started out taking lessons, he was friends with Emil Morrow. They had a big band in Detroit. He said, go see Dave. He can, he'll fix your mouthpiece or adjust it. So Terry started coming by and, I want it to be a little brighter in the upper edges, altissimo, or I want it a little lower, softer in the low end. Well, I'd hear him play a little bit, make a little adjustment. I could sense it's going in the right direction. It was just a sixth sense that I started to develop. So I called it Jewel Musical Products, Jewel Mouthpieces. And then focused in on student stuff. I wanted students to be able to play, without restrictions that are normally caused by, playing on the wrong size mouthpiece. So I started to adjust according to what I thought was an improvement.
So all this is going on in the mid 2000s.
Yeah.
And you decide, okay, I got this idea to do a website to serve as a resource for band directors, which is that's a whole nother world from making clarinet mouthpieces, right? So, right. And that's the time when I first had the opportunity to meet you, and you were launching banddirector.com. So talk to me about that. How did that happen?
Well, my youngest daughter, I was teaching her clarinet, and she would, I was teaching maybe 40 students a week, private students. All the local band directors had their students come here, and she sat on my lap or played on the floor while I was teaching all these lessons. She was a great little clarinet player. She was going from middle school to high school. And this big band, I live in a big suburbs of Detroit, big band community. And the band director at my high school retired. And they moved a young band director from middle school to high school, and he only had a year of middle school. And they didn't give him any support. He was, out on his own. And basically the band was falling apart. Now, I don't fault him because I heard him play and he could play. He was a good musician. He just was way over his head in a big band program. And I was so frustrated. I'm not the type of person, especially when it comes to my kids, you're protective. But the bigger picture was this young man needed support. And if somebody doesn't speak up, there were going to be more students like my daughter who weren't getting what I thought they should have. Because down the street, there was a young band director, and one of the more mature band directors that had, 15, 20 years of experience asked to be put back to that high school. So they had somebody mentoring this other young director who had 7, 8 years experience. They should have taken him and put him with the 1-year experienced director. I don't know why the administration did it like that, but I voiced my opinion. It was not popular. I didn't care because it was about teaching these young kids in this band, and they deserved to have the leadership and the support that they deserved. So out of that frustration, the internet was, at least the way I understood it, was just really getting going. And I said, well, I'm going to help. I'm going to post articles. I'm going to find a way where, because there was, a lot of young directors don't want to go and ask for help. That was my opinion, because they want to look like they can handle the job, which, as we know, you should be able to rely on some of your good friends and colleagues to help you along. Paul Schaller told me one time he was having difficulty with a passage. Now you're talking to a guy that has 30 years as a principal, but he always wanted to be better. Maybe that's why he was there 35 years, right? He would say, I'd go to my friend that I could trust to say, hey, listen to this. Am I hearing it the way you hear it? So anyways, I went and got the URL, banddirector.com, and just started posting articles. One of my private students was a web designer, and he helped me get it all started, post an article, and I started to get a following, and we started to do more articles and more followers, and it started to grow. Well, I was paying for this all myself with the cutting grass, washing windows, and private teaching. It was so. I said, well, maybe I get the industry involved because we're all in this together. And Consumer was one of the first companies. And I got a call from a gentleman, Rich Bretsky. So we'll talk about Rich later, but he was one of the marketing people there, education. And he says, well, we can give you some support. We put our banner up there. I said, wow, this is great. It's because my wife was saying, hey, where are we going to go from here? And so, so that's how it started. And then it progressed to, well, if band directors, if we're helping them, and other educators, they wanted to participate. It was always the best, though. It was always the best educators. I didn't want anything substandard. It had to be from the people that I thought were the greatest. So if we can help band directors, maybe we can help students. So I said, let's do some videos and do some online videos for young students. And that started to become part of the site.
So it's really grown, amazingly since those early days. And of course, one of the things that I'm, so impressed about it is that you maintain that it's going to be a free resource. It's not a subscription-based type a product, correct? That's
correct. It's all free. And, how you and I met, the next progression was, now I'm in my garage. I have two young former students, and one of them says, you know what you should do, Mr. Knox? You should do live. And, these are young internet techie kids that, sometimes they don't understand the how it all comes together, how it all works, but they have ideas. And so I could see where this could go. And I said, yeah, well, how do we do this? So what they did was, we got to buy all this equipment. We'll build this computer. And here we are on the garage floor putting all this stuff all together. And I got it together, and I was going down to see Dee Stewart at Indiana. And I said, Dee, I says, we might be able to do this live. You game? And he says, yeah, bring it along. So I have this list of steps I had to take. And when I got to the last step, boom, it was live. And so, what a thrill, So people from all over all over the world could have logged into the URL and see something live. That was 4 years before YouTube ever did a live stream. 4 years before YouTube. And then, of course, you were the next call, and then we did the band at Vandercook. But it was tough going at the beginning there because people didn't understand, what to do with it. I had what I felt was my vision, but, well, what does this mean? How do we use this? Can it be important? And, of course, it was the next best thing from being there. Because up until then, you either saw something on TV, but you could never see, if you lived in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, you could never see Vandercook play live. You could never see Michigan State or any of the other great, ensembles. We even did Kirk Whalum at a jazz club in Detroit. It was unbelievable,
So if I'm a band director now and I visit banddirector.com, what should I expect to find? What can I find there?
Well, you can find everything from how-to videos, interviews with important people like band directors, musicians. You can find live events. We've got a link on there for any university that we have in our catalog that does live events. We have their iframes there. If they're streaming a live concert, you just select their name, their school name, and their iframe will pop into the site. It's a one-stop resource, and it's amazing. I look back at some of the stuff, and I can't believe it's there. It's so evergreen because great information never dies. And so we're finding new ways to use the technology and trying to connect with the young and upcoming directors, and the cycle continues. Going back to that garage, one of my good friends is Chris Collins, who's the artistic director for the Detroit Jazz Festival. He's also the director of jazz studies at Wayne State. So I said, Chris, I need some help this summer. Do you have a young band director or a student that would be willing to help? So he introduces me to a young gentleman named Anthony Messina. So Anthony comes over and he works a couple summers, and you could just tell Anthony's going to be just a great band director. He plays in the jazz band, he plays in the concert band, symphonic band. He's the librarian. I mean, he just is that kind of a young man. So Anthony and I have always stayed in touch with one another, and now he's an associate director of the marching band at Dr. Anthony Messina at University of Illinois. Great friendships that have lasted 25 years now.
That's great. Well, it's been an organic growth, and that's what's kind of neat about it, is that, it started with your roots, and it just continues to keep growing. And in fact, this year, you even took another step, and you became the platform for the Midwest Clinic, or I should say the 2020 virtual Midwest Clinic. And that was being associated with the Midwest Clinic for 23 years, my time at Vandercook, that was a leap of faith for that organization to say, we're going to go online. But, what challenges did you face in making that a reality?
Well, we reached out to Midwest when we heard that they had canceled in person. And we offered to help them in any way we can. And, it goes back to, that feeling about how can you help music education? How can we help? How can we help a student? How can we help a program? How can we, in a great institution like that? Because I knew that, trying to do an online platform at that late of a stage, it would have been a challenge no matter what. But it's funny how things come full circle, because a lot of the technology that here at Band Director, what we were developing for future use of the site was already in the works. And I could envision how we could help them put things in place that would give a virtual experience of being there. So we reached out, and they asked for a proposal and an idea. So Dr. Crane had invited me to participate with a Zoom meeting with the board. I had some things sketched out and said, here's what my vision is. And they discussed it, they liked it. And that gave us about 8 weeks to put this whole thing together. It was so 8 weeks. We put together, I think, 20 educational online courses that had multiple chapters per course. The program allowed professional development certificates, if you completed all the chapters within a session, to print a certificate for professional development. We had a featured video area where we had it from the past, a concert from Canadian Brass. We had the Navy Band who just performed something. And through some contacts of Dr. Crane and myself, we reached out to one of the Japanese contacts that brings the Mark Humphreys with the Japanese bands. So we had the Hiroshima Wind Orchestra perform a special premiere, and we had that. So that was something you couldn't see anywhere else but on that Midwest conference. So in addition to that, one of the ideas that we had was, when you're at Midwest and you go to the vendor area, there's always groups performing out there in the lobby there. And I says, well, I think what we should do is kind of emulate that. So we had a whole section for all of the industry, virtual booths. But before you got to the virtual booths, there was the opportunity for those companies to sponsor performance videos of their artists. And so you could go there. We had 125 videos that were submitted. Just unbelievable performances, some that nobody has ever seen before, others that probably were in archives. And then from there, we called that the trade show department, or the trade show lobby. And then you enter the vendor area, which we had all of the video booths where you could connect to the industry. They could upload in their virtual booth videos from their YouTube account. It would automatically update. So they could put up videos that very next day, that same day, and everything was automated. And it was a success. It was a tremendous success. It was a challenge because a lot of the content didn't come in until the week prior. So we were working around the clock for, 12 days to try to upload all this content and to make this thing come off in 8 weeks. So I was on the phone with Dr. Crane, Kelly Bryant, the executive director, and Dr. Crane said he was praying, and I said, we're going to make this happen. So
yeah, and it came off really well. I tuned into it. I enjoyed it. But like anything else, I mean, no matter what your first effort is, if it's producing a national trade show, or you're playing a piece of music for the first time, or whatever, and you always have the chance to do it again. You might tweak it here and you might tweak it there. So what do you think you might tweak?
Technology changes every day. I think the challenge is to make it simple. It takes a lot of engineering behind the scenes to make something work as if it was just natural, simple, navigating. Find what you're looking for. And there's some new things. All of this virtual online teaching and learning has opened up doors, and so what is the future? I'm not sure, but I've got some ideas of how banddirector.com can grow with that. And so we're going to pursue some of those ideas.
Yeah. And of course, like you say, you had 8 weeks to get it together. You don't have a lot of time for research and development. I mean, you were back in your firefighter mode, Dave. That was a 3-alarm fire that you were fighting there.
Stay calm, stay calm, try to make the right decisions, Yeah.
Oh, man.
My heart still races a little bit when I hear a siren going down the street.
Had your raincoat and your hat on, trying to get the Midwest Clinic up, man.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's change the topic here a little bit.
Yeah.
You have a very unique perspective, and I always love your perspective. So, think about school band for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that such an important part of a kid's life?
Well, I think it not only for a kid, but also their parents too. It's a family thing. It's heart, soul, and mind. One of my favorite things to listen to are Haydn string quartets. It's just soothing. If I'm having a bad day or I'm having a good day, it's just, I think you become a different person when music is part of you. If you were to look at all my children, they didn't go into music, but music is a big part of their life. My youngest daughter played clarinet. I'm teaching, my young grandson and granddaughter instruments. My grandson's playing clarinet. He's 6, but I got a little E flat clarinet, and every one of them can buzz a trumpet. but it's the parents going to the band concerts. It's the grandparents going. My grandmother bought me my first clarinet. It's funny, if you come over my house any given day, I've got 9 grandkids. They're all 9 and under, and they know now to knock on the door to see if I'm on the phone, but they'll peek inside and say, "Can we have band day?" And I've got just about every instrument in my office. And I'll say, "Yeah, come on in." So 4 or 5 of them will come, or if we're having a family dinner, they'll all come in. Even the youngest one, he's 1.5. They all pick something up and they just make noise, you know. But my son is 42, 41, 42. If you look at his playlist, he'll have everything from, the Stones to the Haydn string quartets to Disney theme music, everything, because they were all part of that growing up with me as kids being at the university or listening to me practice for hours on end. That's part of them. And I'm so proud that they became the adults that they have. And I think that's partly due to because they had music in their life.
Yeah. People listening to this podcast, I mean, they have got to just pick up on your passion. I mean, you bring such a passion to everything that you do. And if you can, for just a minute, look back to that early times of being in elementary school, that kid that quit band in 9th grade, what things from there do you remember, or can you remember, that maybe help to continue to motivate you to pursue your life's work?
Well, the thing I remember, there's a couple of memories that always come through. The first time I saw a silver clarinet, in band when I was in 8th grade, and I thought it was so cool. But it was that concert, playing in the band with the sound around me that started it. I don't know if I'd change anything, because if I did, then I probably wouldn't be where I'm at today. The one thing that I feel bad about is that if my wife felt nervous about it, changing careers and changing everything, if it wasn't for her support, I'm just so lucky that I have that. But I don't think I would change anything. I mean, it was such a journey. It was such an excitement that I wouldn't be in this position right now. So,
How about from your time as a firefighter, and that training and experience, that anything that remains with you that helps keep you focused and motivated?
I think there's an appreciation for life, because in those 10 years, I saw many people pass away due to fires, car accidents. I think it's you learn over time to stay calm. Those that don't survive in a position like that, they get out. Those that stay there, they learn to control their emotions. They learn to control their anxiety. They learn to, they deal with sadness, whether it's a police officer, a firefighter. So I think while when I'm nervous about getting something done or being able to accomplish something, I always know that there's always somebody behind me saying, "You can do this," and I say, "I can do this." And, just stay calm, try to make the right decisions, and, stay passionate. I mean, even when I was on the fire department, I had to be the guy that was on the roof, or I had to be the guy that had the pipe that was in the fire, so with band director, I got to be there somehow connecting. I'm so lucky because of some of the people that I've met. I can remember the first day that I sat down with Sam Palathian at Arizona State University, and Jim Hudson came in and said, "Oh, you're working with the great Sam Palathian." And I'm thinking, well, why is everybody saying the great Sam Palathian? And I hadn't looked him up. I just heard that day that was who was going to sit with me doing the broadcast. It wasn't until later that I realized that, holy cow, This is a guy that played with every major orchestra in the world. He recorded with Pink Floyd. And this guy, and I didn't look him up until after that day was over. And Sam is talking to me like he's just a regular guy. But, the people that I met and there's so many of them, going back to Rich. Rich was my first contact 25 years ago and started his own marketing company. And somehow we connected about 7 or 8 years ago. And I said, Rich, come on, let's work together. And he's a brilliant mind in marketing and education. And he's got a perspective and my perspective and it works, and yeah, I mean, we could talk for hours, but it's
Sam Palafian, he was a rock star, man, and we lost him this year. And
yeah,
man, he was just he's a great person. And you mentioned Rich Bresky. Rich is, he's a double sharp guy. He brings a lot of creativity to it. And I know he's working with you there. So one last question here for you. I mean, you've mentioned your wife many times throughout this, and obviously you have a great relationship and you have a love for her that is endless. As you look back at it, what kind of things have you learned about Dave Knox from your wife?
She's a rock, as I mentioned before, my early childhood was not with oversight. I mean, I was able to run wild, so I could go places, jump, places. She was the rock. I've got the energy, and I would just go out there, but she would keep me grounded. But again, it goes back to, and I think it could be for anything you want to do. If you have somebody that has that much support and believes in you that much, man, you could just feel like you could conquer, Mount Everest. I think that's rare, but it could be a colleague, it could be, a parent, you could be telling your young child, you can play that instrument, you can do it, just keep practicing, or you can do that math, or, we had known each other since we were 16, 17. And, we've been through so much that, some of the things that I've done, I probably couldn't have done without somebody saying, yeah, you can do it. Okay, then I'm going to try it.
That's great. That's great stuff. Dave, I hope everybody goes and visits banddirector.com, and I hope our band directors will look at all the wonderful things there. But I hope more that they'll just take a lot of what you just said to heart, and you brought a lot of wonderful things to the forefront. And you're a dear friend, man. I hope our association continues for many, 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 many more years, buddy.
Well, Charlie, you were the first person that said, yes, let me do a video for banddirector.com. And you did 3 or 4 videos. We came to Vandercook. I'll never forget that. If it wasn't for you and other people like us that have a passion to keep music education alive, to participate, none of this would continue. It wouldn't have even got off the ground, working together and sharing ideas. And, we're only here for a short time, but I want every kid, I don't want any student to quit out of frustration for things that if we come together, we can keep them in band. It's, I just love the music that much, and I enjoy it. I feel, they say, oh, I'm so blessed, but really I am, because I'm able to work at home. I'm able to do the things that I love to do. I'm with my grandkids every day. My son came on many of the live webcasts we did. How many times we came to Vandercook and brainstormed and just, you were at my daughter's wedding there in Chicago. And
it was a very beautiful affair.
I just, talking to you, talking to other people, and all the people I'm associated with. It just makes me feel, like I did something, that I don't want to make that sound, just so accomplished that I was able to do this. And we're all, we all have our strengths. So I have mine, you have yours, the local middle school director has his, the students have, we all have a part to play.
And you're playing a great part for us all, Dave. Thanks so much for being on the podcast, brother. I'll see you soon.
See you, Charlie. Thank you. Appreciate it.
He dropped out of band and became a firefighter, only to realize the thing missing in his life was music. So he risked it all and pursued his dream. Today, he's doing both. Through his banddirector.com website, he is helping the profession put out fires through his love of music. Dave Knox, he's quite a guy, and I'm proud to call him my friend. Well, that's Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. We'll be back with more great conversations. And until then, this is Charlie Mangini saying, thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. If you would like to send a question to Charlie or have a comment, please send an email to bandtalkcharlie@gmail.com. We hope you will let your colleagues, students, and friends know about Band Talk with Charlie Mangini and friends. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to being with you again soon.